What's up, fam? It's Darren from Push Black. You already know we about building Black power, and it starts with us showing up in big ways. One of the most powerful things we can do is turn out in record numbers to vote. Every single one of us counts. That means you. You matter. And so does your vote. Let's make a difference together. Go to pushblackvotes.com to register or check your registration status. On today's episode of Black History Year, we're talking twerking, footwork, and the cultural significance of Black dance. Stay tuned.
Ready to level up? Chumba Casino is your playbook to fun. It's free to play with no purchase necessary. Enjoy hundreds of casino-style games like bingo, slots, and solitaire anytime, anywhere. With fresh releases every week. Whether you're at home or on the go, let Chumba Casino bring the excitement to you. Plus, get free daily login bonuses and a free welcome bonus. Join now for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. Play Chumba Casino today. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. T&Cs apply.
He performed for audiences worldwide, starred in video projects to honor Black lives, and was part of a professional dance company. But that day, July 29, 2023, he was hanging with his friends enjoying a little Beyonce. But as he joyfully vogued to Break My Soul, he was approached by teenagers bothered by his dancing. Though O'Shea Sibley often danced in public, this time was different. One of the teens heard sexual slurs at him and the two went back and forth. Sadly, the teen stabbed Sibley to death. Communities from LA to New York vogued in protest of the murder, and Beyonce even honored him. I'm Darren from Push Black, and you're locked into Black History Year. There's something powerful about the way Black bodies move when we dance. Whether in front of the mirror or at a family reunion, when we do a 1-2 step, it seems like the atmosphere changes. So what is it about Blackness and dancing that transcends mere movement and becomes something almost metaphysical? Helping us think through this today is our wonderful guest, Kemal Nance, performer, choreographer, and scholar of African Diasporan Dance. He's here to keep our conversational dance card full as we unpack the origins of Black dancing and what it means for our culture, community, and ultimately, liberation. Nance teaches courses in contemporary African dance practice, also known as Umfundalai, dance history, Black masculinity, and repertory. His Nance Dance Collective brings together communities of Black men throughout the African diaspora to tell stories about what it means to navigate the world in a Black and male body. But first, some history.
Growing up in the 1950s, Carrie-Amu Welsh learned to catch the beat, jumping double dutch with friends. As a young adult, inspired by the Black arts movement, she was very aware of racism within the arts. Studying African Diasporan Dance in New York, Jamaica, and throughout Africa, Welsh found that these dances, though different, were related. Our ancestors survived generations of enslavement and colonization, all the while passing down movements and rhythms that naturally evolved over time. Wanting to preserve the essence of these movements, Welsh established a dance technique called Umfundalai. Umfundalai is a Kiswahili word meaning essential. Over time, Umfundalai grew an international following. Welsh became a cherished teacher and scholar. Welsh passed away in October 2021, but her legacy lives on through the National Association of American African Dance Teachers, who are dedicated to continue teaching Umfundalai. Black creative genius is constantly denied, whitewashed, appropriated, and erased. Welsh knew this all too well. Daring to be, she said, is a position that one has to take throughout life. Like Welsh, We must determine our own worth, listen to our calling, and dare to be.
What's up, fam? Before we dive into the episode, I have one small favor to ask. Please spread the word about Black History Year on social media. Podcasting is competitive, y'all, and the best way to grow is through your promotion. You can shout out this episode or share one lesson from it you found super interesting. Just tag us at We Are Push Black on Instagram and TikTok so more folks can access the Black history they didn't teach us in school. Your support means the world to us, and your minute of effort makes our hours of work worth it. So thank you, fam. Now, let's get into the show. All right. How you doing today, Kemal?
I'm good. It's a beautiful day here in Champaign.
All right. Great to hear that. So we are here to unpack the evolution of African dance across culture. And before we dive into that, I want to start with a fun game, if that's okay.
Oh, that's fine. I love games.
All right. So we're going to do a bit of true or false. I'm going to read off some statements. Some are going to be blatantly messy. Some are going to be blatantly false. Some are going to be rooted in truth. And you just let us know how they land with you, true or false. How does that sound?
Okay, let's just give it a go.
All right. True or false, Kemal? The Jackson 5 could have won America's Best Dance Crew.
I'm gonna say true.
Okay.
They had a dead ringer.
True or false? Michael Jackson stole the moonwalk.
True.
Ooh. True or false, Kemal? TikTok is the perfect platform for teaching African dance.
False.
True or false, Kemal? White people should not be teaching African dance classes.
Oh, I'm gonna say false.
Okay. True or false, Kemal? Crip walking is a trace of traditional African dance.
Crip walking is a trace? Is that the word you use? Yes. True.
True or false, Kemal? White people can dance.
True.
True or false, Kemal? The white gaze sexualizes black dances.
True.
True or false, Kemal? The dance floor can be a metaphor for black liberation.
True.
Whoa, thank you.
Absolutely.
Curious, what does black liberation mean to you, especially in light of this idea of the dance floor being a metaphor for black liberation?
I think black liberation, in terms of a meta-narrative, is the resistance of any imposed edict on one's life. It resists anything that says blackness has to be one thing or a certain way or some kind of monolith. And anything that disrupts that kind of stricture on one's truth, on one's happiness, on one's peace, I think anything that combats that is an act toward black liberation.
Thank you for that, Jewel. Well, we're going to dive right into the world of African dance, the history of African dance. But to get us started, I'm curious, Kemal, do you think our dances, even today, do you feel like they're a form of memory or a form of remembering? Do you think our movements serve as a form of maybe even knowledge?
Absolutely. And there's several knowledges. It's funny. I was talking to my spiritual brother. We have this ongoing conversation all the time about how Africa shows up in our movement practices. And the one thing that I've been recently enamored by is, unfortunately for me, I'm addicted to TikTok and more Instagram than I am TikTok.
Okay.
And there's this dance that I think it comes out of Baltimore. Don't quote me on that, but I think it's called Tripping Out, and it's largely done with male bodies. And on a superficial level, it's this vibratory movement that happens in the pelvis that makes the genitalia bounce. I can't understand the lyrics to the song, but I know it's kind of sexual, this and the third. So from one orientation or from one glance at this dance, it might seem to be a bit lewd from one perspective.
Mm-hmm.
But when I read this dance, and it's not complicated at all, it really is just a vibratory movement of the pelvis. I heard somebody online refer to it as male twerking.
Word.
But when you see the texture of the way this movement is accessed, and you see the way these bodies are stylizing the movement, it really reinforces the fact that there is now, of course, these brothers who are dancing this dance are just doing the latest thing. They're not cognizantly pulling on an epic memory. They're not cognizantly pulling on an African continuum. Oh, but it's there. It's polycentric, it's polyrhythmic, it's textured, and it's simplistic. Like, it doesn't take a lot to do it, but, well, I'm saying it doesn't take a lot to do it because I'm somebody who dances and somebody who, quote unquote, has rhythm. But in terms of some of the other social Black forms that are out there, it's relatively simple. And yet it's so rich. It has such a literacy, it's such a currency in terms of our culture and what we deem as being beautiful. I think it's fascinating. So, I mean, I think that's just one example, but I think that, I mean, given the history of Black people in this country and the insistent effort to stamp out an Africanist culture, and then it keeps showing up, right? We still keep re-identifying ourselves as Black. We keep identifying ourselves as African and Caribbean and all of these kind of epithets that link to an African continuum. We keep doing it. We do have specific ways of moving, specific ways of seeing the world, specific worldviews, despite the attempts to kind of, kill us and kill out what we know as our own culture. And so, I think memory is a real functional aspect of how we see ourselves in the world and how we're surviving.
Thinking about how we continue to show up, this is actually like a real large question that could actually like take up the whole interview. But I'm very curious, man. Like, how does dance even evolve? Do we think about it in like an epigenetic sense? Like, is it passed down biologically? Like, how do we retain this knowledge and how does it evolve?
That's a good question. And I'm nervous to answer that question because I can't even fathom asking the question without even conceiving the idea of social economic class. And that bothers me that I have to think of it that way. Right. So I'm thinking about my own experience being, a young Black boy from Chester, Pennsylvania, single parent household, whose first dance lessons were, dancing to Freak Out by Lashik with my mom in the living room before I go to school. And yeah, of course, she was just doing the disco thing and she was just, getting me up to get ready for school. But those were my first lessons about style and my first lessons about movement and rhythm and how to and joy, right? The joy in movement, enjoying it. And of course, it's allied with it is these fond and beautiful memories of, of my relationship with my mom. But I don't know if I had been born to a more affluent space that I would have had access to those kind of homegrown rhythms of seeing, Chester high school cheerleaders cheer and clap and stomp and seeing girls jump double dutch on the street corner or seeing people, and particularly at the advent of the 80s, people pulling out linoleum so they can spin on their head and learn how to do the break moves or practice locking and popping. I don't know if I had access to a more affluent way of being that those things would mean as much to me. Going to a Black church and stomping and, and people getting happy and transcending. I don't know, if the things that are important to me in terms of rhythm and the things I recognize in terms of memory and texture and Africanisms, for lack of a better word, would have come to me if I had any other experience that way. But I think, and I'm saying that because I think that's how it's passed down. Like, I think it's passed down mother to child. I think it's passed down socially. I distinctly remember being in the 9th grade, even though I went to a predominantly white Catholic high school, I lived in the projects in Chester, Pennsylvania. So I remember coming home and my neck and back hurting because I was trying so vigilantly to learn how to do the Cabbage Patch. And I could see people on every other corner in the neighborhood practicing how to do the cat to get it just right, not just the exactitude of the step, but to do it with some sense of style and finesse so that you'd be known for. I remember going to school the next morning hurting, physically hurting because I had worked so hard to get my shoulders to pop just right so that when I go to that next party, and it's my time to show off that I could have something that was mine. I don't know if people who live in cul-de-sacs who, and I'm not saying this as a judgment, I'm just saying it as a question. I don't know if those things are as important.
Oh, we. There's so much richness in that, Kemal. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, let me see if I can just latch on to one thread. I love this notion of this evolution of African dance, of Africanisms taking place in a social and cultural context. Really, you got to be like related in community to be able to kind of absorb some of these things. And you also lifted up the importance of the church, in particularly like in your own history, but also I'm thinking about just the relationship between African dance and also this notion of conjuring the divine. Very much interested in why is it. Yeah, well, not even why is it like what do you see as the relationship between like movement, African dance, and this notion of conjuring the divine, whether it takes place in a Christian church or in an indigenous ritual? What do you think the relationship is there?
I think it's funny. I'm having a hard time describing the relationship because I think they're one and the same. I think, I think there is a divinity in moving, and particularly moving in an Africanist or Black context. Whether one is conscious of it or not, one can't exist without the other, as far as I'm concerned. Which I think it's ironic that we're now in a space where people are talking, and particularly in the Black church, that people talk about praise dancing as a thing when it's always been a thing in our worldview, right? Dancing and exaltation and dance in relationship with the divine and the obscene has always been a characteristic of African informed movement. Always. It's always been. This is dated back, centuries, right? And I think in our country, I think of the way we've been socialized as Black Americans, we've bought into no fault of our own, but we've bought into this kind of segregatory or compartmentalized way of sacred has to be over here, social has to be over here, and never should the two mix. Whereas in an Africanist context, the barriers of those spaces are more porous. One can fluidly float from one thing to another. You just look at some of the dance traditions of Western Africa in particular, voodoo, voodoo, Yoruba, those spaces are more malleable. So I think there's one and the same. And when you see somebody getting their life at a battle or in a cipher, of course, they're just getting their life, they're getting their energy. We call it vibing, we call it grooving. They talk about going off, setting off, tripping. But all of that is a connection to something else beyond us. That's why we recognize it when we see it, right? Right? If you take the words out of it, the expressions that we give when somebody is going off is the same expression we would give if somebody got happy in the church, right? It's almost the exact same visceral response. We just have different names for it because we are more comfortable labeling something, because if we label it, we can control it to some extent. So to answer your question, I don't know that the evolution of Black dance forms or African American dance forms or African diasporic forms have ever been divorced of divinity. I think for it to be Black dance, it has to be some aspect of spirituality.
Well, I'm curious, in your personal experience and throughout your teachings and travels, about the facilitation of healing and catharsis through movement. I wonder if you could just share any insights there.
My teacher, may she rest in peace, the late, great Dr. Karyama Welsh, when she would teach class, she would always say to us at some point or another, she had a lot of different mantras and a lot of different mottos and slogans. And one of the things she always said to us is that when she came into the dancing space, regardless of how she felt going into it, some aspect of herself or some aspect of her personhood felt better upon leaving the dancing space, right? And of course, she was teaching a codified technique, right? She was teaching this Umfundalai technique that she developed, or as she would aptly say, came through her. And so even in a codified, structured studio space, she always said, some aspect of it, at the end of it, somehow she felt better on some way, shape, or form. And she encouraged us to let it do that for us. And I've watched her, one time, just before she retired from Temple University, I watched her walk into the studio with pneumonia. Now, of course, we didn't know she had pneumonia. We just thought she was under the weather. She got off the plane. She had a piece to choreograph. She went into the studio with pneumonia.
Whoa.
When she came out, she had a full-fledged 6-minute dance. And we were trying to convince her to, let's get some medical attention or something. She said, and I remember her saying, something shifted. I don't feel as bad as I did before. Something shifted, you know. She was pretty stubborn that way too. She did eventually go to the hospital, and of course we found out she had pneumonia. She got some meds. She was fine for the concert. But I think that dance is at least in the way that I teach technique, and a lot of people who teach Africanist practices, that, you know, the problems that plague you before you go into the dance space are going to be there when you leave, right? You talk about Black liberation and you talk about divination. The dancing space is a place where you can free yourself from all of that. The dancing space is a place where you can find answers, right? You can find answers to some things that you're questioning or dealing with in your life outside the dancing space. And so I think dancing is, can be, so it's rigorous, it's hard on the body, but it's just as, in fact, more so healing than, running or lifting weights and things like that, because I contend, particularly from dancers from the African diaspora, that without you knowing it, or maybe you do know it, it connects you to your source. It connects you to it connects you to your cultural center.
Yes, indeed.
And some people are closer to it than others, and some people can articulate that better than others. But I've seen it happen 1,001 times.
Thumbtack presents the ins and outs of caring for your home. Out, indecision, overthinking, second-guessing every choice you make. In, plans and guides that make it easy to get home projects done. Out, beige on beige on beige. In, knowing what to do, when to do it, and who to hire. Start caring for your home with confidence. Download Thumbtack today.
First, the bad news. SAP Business AI won't help you generate cubist versions of your family's holiday photos. But it will help you understand which supplier is best to help you roll out your plant-based packaging in Southeast Asia, or identify the training your junior project manager needs to rise up the ranks, and automate repetitive tasks while you focus on big innovations, so you can be ready for the next opportunity. Revolutionary technology, real-world results. That's SAP Business AI.
Okay, before we take it to Umfundalai, kind of want to look at the relationship just between political movements and bodily movements. When we were thinking about this conversation, myself, I was struggling to think about how do we think about resistance through the lens of dance, and what historical moments can we look at when we think about political resistance in African dance? Mm-hmm. With that said, Kemal, I'm curious, are there any moments in history that jump out to you when you think about African dance as a form of resistance?
Oh, yes. I teach a course, or I used to teach a course here at the University of Illinois called Black Dances of Resistance. There is this video. I use it in my classes all the time. It's on YouTube. And it's a video of Rufus Thomas. He has on this fierce pink short set.
Okay.
This is the late 60s. This is immediately following the Watts riot.
Cool.
And he's singing this song, Step Together Children. It's this funky song. I think it's called Step Together Children. He's jamming. But the camera pans to the people in the audience. And you see this sister just like in it, like her hips are going. She has this high mini skirt on. Her hair is half up, half down, and her hips are going. Her shoulders are going. She's jamming to the music, but from another lens, from a knowledgeable lens. She's transcending.
Oh,
she's leaving us. She's in a space that I would consider divine, right? And some of that is dancing off the anguish of what just happened, right? It's the Watts riots, right? And then you see other people, and you see these brothers locking, on the floor of the arena, and then you just see people dancing and just bopping their heads and full out moving in the arena. Wow. Then, and of course, Rufus is jamming, slide to the left and slide to the right, bam, bam, and you see these people, and then something magical happens. and scary. You see the gate comes down because people rush to the stage. And of course, the police are trying to stop them, or the police gets in there because they think it's going to be another riot. But this is a riot of a different source. They weren't coming to tear stuff down. They were coming for something. They were coming to be healed. They were coming to be reconciled. They were coming to atone. Those are the languages, those are the epithets I'm putting on it because I recognize what was happening. But in this moment of political unrest, you see this sea of African American people defiantly finding joy, right? You see them resisting the heaviness of the occasion and freeing themselves viscerally, right? They're jamming, right? And you hear Rufus trying to calm people down while he's singing, but it's a magical moment. There are moments like that all the time that happen, right? There are moments like that happen all the time. And unfortunately, non-Black onlookers don't know what to make of it, so they immediately get afraid. So they immediately prepare for violence. And not to say that there's sometimes violence does occur, but in your preparation for violence, you might eclipse the opportunity for joy.
Yeah, I was not ready, Kemal. I thought I was ready, but I was not ready. Thank you so much. Okay, just staying on this line of thought, thinking about the relationship between resistance and African dance. Just doing a bit of history for myself, I came across these dance formations across the spectrum of African dance that were explicitly related to a political moment in history. So I'm just going to share the name of like maybe 4 or 5 of these kind of dance forms, these African dance traditions, and just respond however you like. So Bamba was one that I came across, the cakewalk, capoeira, voguing, and b-boying.
I'm not as familiar with bomba. I know it's a Puerto Rican dance. It comes out of Puerto Rico. So I'm not as familiar. I've seen it. I think it's absolutely exquisite. Yes. I think you can see similarities and connections to that and samba and rumba. I think they come out of the same worldview, but I don't know it well enough. The cakewalk in terms of its cultural vitality, I put the cakewalk right up there with voguing. Ooh. In terms of Black people's ability to take their situation and take agency in it. The cakewalk, started in Black people's parody of their oppressors.
Yeah.
Right? Of course, white folk didn't know the joke was on them, and of course took delight in seeing these Black people dance, but didn't know that the joke was on them. It's a parody of of white people's idiosyncrasy. And I am going to say white people because it's during the plantation South, the early and during the enslavement period, where Blackness and whiteness became a thing. It became a locus of control, particularly after the Bacon Rebellion, right? Yeah. It was a way to, they didn't want, Africans running away with Irish indentured servants. So the way to keep them separate is to put a higher bounty on Black people's bodies. So if you were Black, you had a different bounty than if you were. So there's a whole history of that we don't have time for, but you could look it up on, for yourself. So, but it was an opportunity, for white slave masters to look at Black people dance and think they took joy of the superficial execution of movement. But in terms of an Africanism, it was the way Black people were dealing with being oppressed and making fun of, quite frankly, making fun of their oppressors, right? The parody. Voguing does a similar thing, right? You have these marginalized people, Black and Latino queer individuals who adore and enamored by the construction of white femininity, right? And the resentment of not having access to it on Black male bodies, right? And so inadvertently create this whole movement practice that is about this parody of white femininity, right? You see the faux fragility of the death drop, right? Yeah. The idiosyncratic manipulations of the hands and the situation of the face and the whole daintiness of it all. You see it in voguing. And of course the same thing happens, right? White folks didn't know the joke was on them. Of course they capitalized on it. So Madonna makes millions off of a form that it's actually talking about her, but she didn't originate. And so it repeats itself again. And then you will see that happen time and time again where an idiom or something will come up in the way in social Black forms, and somehow it makes its way to American popular culture and then global culture. And then people forget the source of it. People forget where it comes from. So I put those two together for that reason, this idea of parody and how that becomes a portal for the way we do things in movement wise, particularly in socially in Black spaces. There was something else you mentioned. You mentioned Boomba. Oh, capoeira. I love capoeira.
Oh, yes, yes.
It's like it's a Brazilian mixture of martial arts and movements. The late great Baba Chuck used to always say it's breakdancing's grandfather. Right. And it's a wonderful practice. I think it's also really, really speaks to the genius of Black people, right? To have a martial art form, a dance form that's a martial art form that is equally deadly as it is beautiful.
Oh my goodness, there's so much there. I'm thinking about just how coded these movements are and what they're out for as well. You mentioned like capoeira was this deadly martial art form that, in the context of colonial Brazil, they didn't recognize what they were actually practicing. So I'm thinking about like African movements' ability to cohere community, power, but also to kind of traffic in a subversive way of speaking back to power. Thank you so much for like threading those together, Kemal.
Yeah, there's a scholar. I mean, he rested. I think he's gone on to. My teacher recommended that I read his work, and admittedly, his work is pretty dense. It's pretty difficult to read, but it was mind blowing for me. And that's the work of Sterling Stuckey. When he does his exploration of the ring shout and its function in the African American community. And what I did, I understood the ring shout because we have the ring shout in the Umfundalai technique. We have both the sacred and the secular ring shout. So I knew its history from that lens. But what I just recently began to appreciate is that it's the movement, it's the dancing, the movement of the ring shout that created a way for multiple African peoples to communicate.
Ooh.
Right? This kind of this trudging along with the feet, after the service and seeing dust flying. That movement space became a space where Igbo and Mandinka and all the other, and I'm not even going to pretend to name them all, but there's several different ethnic groups who weren't necessarily allies in Africa, are now forced under this new oppression to get along and to survive the horrors of the enslavement period, right? It's the movement. It's that ring shout is one of the spaces in which they were able to calibrate their understanding of what's going on. That's huge. It's also too that the synchronization of African religions in that space was able to absorb Christianity. We always think of it as a differently. We always think about converting to, right? That's what I was always taught. And I say that as a Christian. We always thought that we converted to Christianity. We don't think about African religions absorbing Christianity. So when you think about the Black church and you think about how we celebrate and how we praise and how we exalt the same deity in non-Black church, and why ours is specifically rich and specifically festive and specifically rhythmic, that makes sense, right? So I think that all of these practices, they speak to a continuum, but they also speak to the genius and the vitality of Africanity in all those spaces. And some of it is not knowledgeable. Some people don't. I mean, we don't know we were doing this, right? We don't know. In fact, my teacher, the late Dr. Carrie Welsh, writes about and talks about how some of her motivations for Mufuna was watching her mom in her slip top cooking breakfast, being in that space. And she said, her mind would go off. Now, she would always say, my mother didn't have a working, her mother at least, didn't have a working ideology about African culture. She was just doing what she was, but it was, from from the conscious observer, you see where, these things come from. You see that, oh, wow, this is analogous to something else that happens throughout the African diaspora. And it happens through movement.
Gearing up for holiday shopping? Introducing Klarna, a smarter way to spend. Klarna has a new cashback program where you actually get rewarded for shopping. Plus, you can split your purchases into 4 payments with 0 interest. It's like having a smart, flexible shopping buddy, making your holiday gift buying easier. Choose Klarna at your favorite retailers or shop now at Klarna.com.
California resident loans made or arranged pursuant to a California finance law license. NMLS number 1353190. Klarna balance account required. Klarna may get a commission. Limitations, terms, and conditions apply.
Look around. What do you see? Cars, lots of them. And guess what? They're probably on AutoTrader. Whether you're into timeless classics or the latest trends. Did somebody say solar-powered, eco-friendly, vegan leather-wrapped, aromatherapy-scented, disco ball-equipped, self-driving car? If you see it on the road, you can likely find it on AutoTrader. Big cars, small cars, blue cars, new cars and used cars, electric cars. And one day, maybe even flying cars. With millions of options to choose from, buying a car becomes a whole lot easier. See it, find it. AutoTrader.
Okay. So you've made mention of Kariamu Welsh.
Mm-hmm.
We could not have this conversation today without her work and without Umfundalai. With that said, for those of us who are unfamiliar, Kemal, who was Kariamu Welsh, and why is she important to lift up when thinking about the evolution of African dance?
Oh, man. I don't know how much time you have. I'm writing about her right now. I'm working on a book and I'm writing about her. Okay, so the textbook answer is that, Kariamu Welsh, Dr. Kariamu Welsh, was a scholar of African dance. But she would say, let me go back. She would start by saying she's a dancer. She's an artist. Right? She would start off by saying she's an artist, a choreographer, an artist. Then she would say she's a teacher. She wouldn't necessarily refer to herself as a scholar, but she is by nature of what she did. She's a scholar. And she's a mom. She was a mom. And at some point she was a wife. And she's an auntie. And she's somebody's sister. And she's somebody's sister friend. And all of that wrapped and she made changes in this world in all of those identities. I met her as a college freshman taking a dance class. So for me, my initial contact with her, she was my dance teacher. Soon thereafter, or over the years, I became more than that. Right, I became a dancer in her company. I became one of the people who taught the technique that she developed. She referred to me as her son, I became a colleague, although I wouldn't call myself that. She would call, I became one of her colleagues. And she was just an amazing woman, amazing force, super creative, brilliant. We have her to thank for the way people talk about Black dance now. She created us. She's one of the people who gave us a theoretical scaffolding to kind of evaluate what we do and talk about what we do. She was a full professor upon her retirement from Temple University's dance department, and then she retired in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. And I miss her dearly. Yeah, so she was my mama. She was our dance mother. That's who she was.
Thank you so much for that, Kemal. With that said, for those of us who may have never heard of this formation before, how would you begin to explain what Umfundalai is?
Umfundalai is a contemporary African dance technique that draws on the premise that African dance can live and breathe wherever African people reside. And so with that as your structure, then the Umfundalai represents dance practices not only from the continent of Africa, but also in the Americas and the diaspora, right? It's a style onto its own. It has its own kind of style, but it draws on in a Pan-Africanist kind of way, it pulls on many different African styles. Now, historically, it's important. Now in 2024, the idea of contemporary and African is something we can hear all the time and conceive and pretty much get down with, because a lot of people call themselves that. But Umfundalai is 54 years old. And so it comes out of the Black arts movement when there was a resurgence of Black writers and poets who were looking to resist a Europeanist way of looking at themselves and looking at the world and developing their own way of writing and express themselves. The theaters were coming up, there's, all of those kinds of things. And so she was dealing with dance during that time. And so in the 70s, the idea of contemporary in Africa wasn't something people were using, right? This idea of contemporary African dance, as if Africa exists in this kind of monolith, right? Now, in another language, if there wasn't a such thing as white supremacy and imperialism, Mufunda could very easily be called an African modern dance, in the sense that, it resists, what's become before. Like in the same way that modern dance forms, from Lamont to Graham to some of the others, the way they kind of use and resist ballet, right? Mufundalai resists and steps off from African dance in a way, because it's contemporary African dance. The difference is its source material isn't ballet. Its source material is African dance.
Okay.
Right. So you get a different result. And so, so in that sense of the word, the language that Mufundalai teachers use is, we say that it's a contemporary African dance technique, and we still hold true to that. But in terms of Mama Kariamu's vision, it could very arguably been an Afrofuturistic dancing space, because she saw where it could go. She's always looking for where the movement practice could go. So Mufundalai isn't traditional dance, right? And so in Mufundalai, one of the mantras we always use that she taught us is, we stand on tradition, not in it. Ooh. Right? In the sense that we respect where this stuff comes from, but we also step a little bit aside of it in terms of the stylization, so we can do contemporary art. And that's out of respect for it, and also to make sure that we're keeping histories alive, right? Because some of these dance practices that we do in neo-traditional spaces come with it a whole lineage of very specific functionality in the community, right? When they're done in Africa. And that changes when it leaves Africa. Right. And so Mufundalai steps off, and it's a contemporary form to do contemporary work, but does it from an Africanist perspective.
Yes, indeed. Okay, got a bit of a stickler question for you, Kemal. You may have encountered this throughout your journey, but I'm curious, is there any risk of limiting Blackness or framing Blackness as a monolith when we speak of an African essence in our movement? What?
No, I don't think so. I mean, from one perspective, it could be. I don't think so, because there are multiple essences, right? And I think, we use essence in many different ways, but I think, and it's only now until I think about this to answer your question, but in many ways, when Dr. Welsh was talking about in terms of essence are essential, is that she was trying to leave room for us to not necessarily go after replication. Right? So we're taking the essence of the movement and we're moving past it. We're moving on. We recognize where it comes from, but we're going to a different place with it. And so there's an essence there. And then there's a qualitative assignation with the word essence that we deal with in Mufundalai. There's a quality that we're going for. So I don't think it's a monolithic at all. I think it has many manifestations. I think it can be recognized in many different ways, and I think those ways are evolving as people dance the art form.
My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
Holiday magic is in the air, and DSW's got all the shoes to make your season extra merry. Believe, you've got parties to attend and lists to check twice, so DSW is taking care of the details, like gifts to make their eyes all aglow, styles that bring joy to your world, brands everyone wants, like UGG, Nike, Birkenstock, and more, and deals to make your budget bright. Find the perfect shoes for you and yours at a DSW store near you or dsw.com.
Thinking of evolution, we're about to move into our present day section. But before we do that, I got another game for you, Kemal.
All right, bring it on.
So this one's pretty simple. It's just called This or That. I'm going to lift up 2 pop cultural objects, figures, events, and you just let us know which one, this or that. How does that sound?
I think I understand. Okay, let's give it a go.
Start with one simple. Breaking or footloose?
Breaking.
Okay.
Well, I love me some footloose, but a breaking.
This was maybe a little tough. The Australian Olympic breakdancer named Ray Gunn, or hip-hop dance instructor Dina Rizzo, aka Hip Hop Dina.
I don't know the second part.
Okay.
But I'm gonna choose her over that child from Australia. So.
Okay. After we wrap up,
there can't be anything worse than that. There can't be much worse than that.
Oh, it's gonna be a little close. When we wrap up, hopefully we'll have time to look at a clip together. But okay.
I'll change my mind. But that okay.
You got served or stomp the yard?
Stomp the yard.
Yard. Okay. All That Jazz or tap?
All That Jazz. I love All That Jazz.
Yes.
I love that movie.
Yes. All right, last one. Come on. Sammy Davis Jr. or Bill Bojangles Robinson?
Bill Bojangles Robinson, man.
Ooh, now this one is gonna be a little sensitive. So, in all transparency, Kemal, we got my mother in the room. My mother is a dancer.
Okay.
Actually was a dancing doll for Southern University. She's currently been involved in rehearsals because Southern's homecoming is coming up, and they're inviting the next generations of dancing dolls to perform. So, a little bit of context, just so you know. Jackson State J-Setter or Southern University dancing dolls?
I'm gonna go with the J-Setters.
Wow. Okay, I'm sorry. Sorry, producers, just give us 2 minutes. I gotta know, Kemal, why the J-Setters over the dancing dolls?
Only because I know somebody who J-sets. An Umfundalai teacher named Julian, who does some amazing work. And I'll let the world know, and he'll let the world know. Well, he might not let the world know. I'll let the world know. I was his first dance teacher. I was Julian's first.
Oh my God. Yo, this is so serendipitous. Kemal, I shot an experimental documentary for Julian when he was touring Let 'Em Move You, like the J-set dances. So you were his first teacher. I can't wait.
I was his first dance teacher.
My God. I love it. Okay. Actually, this is a perfect segue, thinking about the work that Julian was up to, and also the work that you're involved in. Right now, really want to think about the relationship between Black masculinity and movement.
Mm-hmm.
With that said, Kemal, can you tell us a little bit about your work with Black Men Dance, that particular initiative?
Yeah. You know, for 20 plus years, I danced with Carry-On and Company and Carry-On and Company Traditions. And I've also danced with some other companies in the greater Philadelphia area. I've danced with, the Beige Performing Arts Company. I danced with the Children of Shango. I danced with Dunia. I danced with the Seventh Principle Performance Company. And I also do so, even as I mentioned that history, it's hard for me to mention that history without mentioning my dearest friend and brother in dance and brother in spirit, brother from another mother, Stafford Berry Jr., who's a professor at Indiana University. So we navigated these spaces together, and in all of those spaces, there was always something that would happen when male bodies would dance. Especially when he and I would dance. And because we danced, we've known each other since we were 15 and 16. And so when we had as movers, we still have a very symbiotic relationship. Like he's a couple of inches taller than me, but when we would go jump, I knew how to stay in the air just a couple milliseconds longer so I could land with him. And we enjoyed dancing with each other. And I just remember the joy of having that. And I also remember some of the experiences, good and not, and prickly experiences being men in dance, right? There was some privilege in being male in dance, right? Sometimes we got picked for stuff because we were men. And then there was also some things that people would forget, that we were taller, so it would take us longer to get to the floor and things like that. But I was always, I've always enamored by what happens when men come together and move, right? Together. There's something special about it. It could be sexist, it could be chauvinistic, but I know aesthetically there's something moving about seeing Black men move together in synchronicity. That's why we love step shows, right? That's why we love doo-wop groups and stuff like that. So I was always fascinated. So I wanted a dancing entity where just men were on the stage doing their thing, right? And I wanted to do, and I still engage with choreographies that speak to the discourse of being male and Black in this country. So that's kind of my creative motivation right now. Masculinity has become really interesting because, first of all, they're myth, they're mythical, and in the Black community, our masculinities aren't necessarily serving us. Some of them are blackened versions of what we've kind of been force-fed or adopted from, our white counterparts. And so masculinity becomes this really interesting intersection. Not altogether healthy, but it's there, right? And so, my academic work sometimes is peeling back that onion and finding out about what that is. Particularly when you tell somebody, right? I'm 6'3", big man, when I tell somebody, I'm a dancer, and the reaction. And then the way when you tell other men I'm a dancer, and how they try to make sense of it. And I think that's fodder for a lot of interesting inquiry, and a lot of dialogue.
Copy that. Well, I am curious, Kemal, from your perspective, how and why did dance become so gendered for Black men in America? What does coloniality got to do with this? Like, why is it you receive those reactions when you do share that you are a dancer?
It's interesting because I think it's one of those things that we've adopted from from oppression, right? Some research says it goes back to the Cold War during the Reconstructionist period, where, when people would go to see ballet, particularly men go to see ballet under the male gaze, they were looking for eroticism, right? To see the ballet dance was to see someone who they're supposed to want sexually, right? And so what happens if you're going to dance to be aroused by the dancer, and another male transverses that space? What does that do to the gaze? What does that do to the intentionality of the male body transversing that space, right? What is his reason for being seen in a space that's supposed to be the object of the male gaze? The really reductive conclusion is that male must be non-heterosexual. Right. So we get this stigma that the dancing body is one that is not straight. And regardless if it's straight or not, it's a ridiculous notion, right? Yes. And yet it still exists in our community. Now, here's the thing that's so sad. It's not the case in traditional African societies.
Wow.
Right? Like, to prove your masculinity, you dance well.
Yeah.
There are certain movement practices in Western Africa where your ability to move and dance shows your virility. Right?
Yeah.
I remember being in Senegal in a nightclub at way too early in the morning. Men were dancing with each other. Not that women weren't there, but men were literally dancing with each other.
Okay.
And some of my experience in traveling to West Africa, men were holding hands, walking down the street arm in arm, arm around each other.
Wow.
We're still those people. We're still Black people. Our roots are still African. What are we unlearning in our American experience such that is not the case? That kind of intimacy between men is deemed perverse, or that kind of physical connection, movement has become ostracized as something that's non-masculine. That's ridiculous, but it's something that we live with all the time.
Okay. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about this, Kemal, because when I saw this title, my eyes just lit up. Very much curious about the dance film that you made titled These Nuts, Black Bodies Dancing Defiance. What does that have to do with our conversation we're having right now about breaking open masculinity through movement?
Because it's interesting, because the notion of the piece, the notion of the project was I wanted to see if my experience were singular. Because in my dissertation work, I found that some of the revelations I was having was just me having it. We weren't collectively having it. So I wanted to see if other Black men from other places still deal with this friction of being a male dancer doing African dance. They have to deal with the friction of their community of being masculine or non-masculine or what have you. So I pulled together 3 dancers, one from the States, from the United States, from Allentown, Pennsylvania, one from Jamaica, from Kingston, and one from London, in UK. And I individually went to their spaces and interviewed them and danced with them and talked to them. And I brought all 3 of them here to Illinois, and we danced together and talked together and, moved together to find out, was there any commonalities among our experiences? What were the differences? And sadly, there was a lot of commonalities between this friction of being a male and dancing and doing something that you love,
Yeah.
And that transverse goes beyond people's sexuality and their, who they love. It goes beyond that, but it was more of a testament to what, men who dance have to deal with. Admittedly, I called it D's Nuts because I like to hear it. D's Nuts is an affront, right? But I so enjoyed when I got the grant to support the film. And she's no longer at the university, but I so enjoyed when the accountant would call me and say, okay, come on, we got to give These Nuts some attention. I'd be like, we certainly do.
Thank you so much for that.
So for me, it was an inside joke, but it also is a statement about what the piece is about too. So.
Absolutely. Okay. Somewhat relatedly, I'm curious, Kemal, how do you respond to folks who claim Black dance or African dance today is too sexually explicit?
Some of it is.
Oh, okay.
Well, no, I'm saying that because, I've watched too many YouTubes, and too many Instagrams where some people do take it overboard. But I think, that's a matter of perspective. I think I don't say stuff like that. I guess as a man in his 50s, I look at the younger generation saying, it's not that we didn't bump and grind, when we were younger. It's not that we weren't sexual. It's not that we weren't sinuous in our practices, but I contend there was a ritual to it, right? You had to dance well if somebody wanted you to get up close up to it. Now you just got to be in the space, but that's just me as a rapidly growing crotchety old man. But I think that in terms of the sexual explicitness of it, I don't think dance needs to be pinpointed for that. I think generally speaking, people are more sexual and more, in that way. I just think that the dance is facilitating what people's interests are, but it's not the dance's fault.
Yes. I love that nuance. Me curious about a particular tension that I've witnessed on social media, particularly between African American folks who have some partners who visit the Caribbean for Carnival, and their partners may participate in some dances that take place in Carnival. And some African American folks feel like, hey, actually, that's too sensual for you to be participating in. Yeah. Any thoughts on that?
And whoever says they need to get over themselves, get over it. I mean, it's. I wish we were a little bit more. I think if our oppression was different, our dance would be different. I don't think, I think I love seeing soca and all those dances of the Caribbean, stuff like that. I think it's just it's just a nuanced way of celebrating the Black body, right? And nobody corners the market on it. I think our oppression has forcibly removed us from it more. But you see us fighting to get back. That's why you see twerking is popular. That's why you see this tripping out is popular. It's coming back. I mean, people are getting more as people become more and more okay with their bodies and the skin they're in, then their bodies become a little bit more lucid. The idea of perverse and sexualized, that's more about the gaze's problem than it is the body that they're looking at.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Actually, you just answered my next question. I was going to ask you, what's some of the most prevalent misconceptions we have about twerking?
Yeah, that Miley Cyrus started it.
Oh my God! Have you actually heard this before? Somebody?
Yes, I have students write papers because that's what the reason. She made it pop. She did it, and it became popular. So if you go on Google, you'll see her name, and then of course there's a specific dance. I forget the name of it. It's possible. It's a specific area. It begins with a B. A specific dance that somebody located that said it comes from this particular people. I don't believe that. Mm-hmm. And the reason why I don't believe that, because the articulation, what we know about twerking, the articulation of the buttocks, the articulation of the pelvis and the hips is characteristic of so many West African dances that I don't know how you can pinpoint one specific person unless that person came here and it became pop. And nobody is saying it. They just see the similarity and say it came from this. Whereas I think it's not a one-to-one relationship. I think the articulation of the buttocks, the beauty of a buttocks is an aesthetic principle that goes throughout Africa. So I don't know how people can pinpoint it to a source that directly. So I think that's a misconception, right?
Ooh-wee. Okay. All right. We're about to wrap it up, but I got just one last game for you, Kemal, for your indulgence. This one's very simple. It's just a word association. I'm going to say the name of some past historical figures related to dance, some other pop cultural objects, and you just let us know whatever pops in your mind. All right. First up, Alvin Ailey.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Creative. Yeah, I'll leave it there.
Okay. Soul Train.
Oh. My childhood. Black excellence. Black soul power.
Yes, indeed. Pearl Primus.
Pearl Primus is one of my teacher's teachers. Liberian. Short. Fierce and short.
Next was a bit of a curveball. Cotton candy sweet as gold.
I don't know that phrase. I like cotton candy. I don't know that gold. I've never known gold to be sweet, so I'm a pass on that one.
Okay, just two more for you. The Nicholas Brothers.
Oh, amazing. Symbiotic. Yeah, vital aliveness.
So you think you can dance?
Entertaining. Problematic.
Okay, want to think a little bit about dance and contemporary activism. I have a bit of a large question here, something I was struggling with, something the producers and I were struggling with, think through even how to ask this. But on a very high level, Kemal, how is it a choreographed dance can speak to larger concepts like liberation, struggle, or colonialism?
I don't know how, but I know that it can. The human body is interesting, and it can take on so many different contexts. It can take on so many different messages. And that's the beauty of choreography, right? But those messages, whether they conscious or subconscious or unconscious, can reach people in a multitude of ways, right? You and I could be at the same concert, see the same event, and react to it very differently, right? Because it connects to something maybe I have lived that you have not, and vice versa. So there's so much possibility with the dancing body, given that. There's so much possibility.
How do you respond to folks who scoff at, I don't know if you've seen this over the past, like, I want to say at least since 2014, but Black folks who choose to dance on the front lines of protests, or specifically a BLM protest. How do you respond to folks who scoff at that mode of protest?
They don't get it. People who scoff at that kind of protest haven't really closely looked at our history, right? Like, movement is a part of who we are, and you think about the Stono Rebellion, right? When they were running through Charleston with the beating drum, a slave revolt happened around movement. When you think about the dancing the slave, when slave capturers made Africans dance on slave ships to keep them well, but it was also the movement of the of Africans that kind of subverted the gaze for them to do, to make an active approach to our freedom. I think if you ignore those histories, then of course you can come to the place that you can scoff at movement and dancing at protests. But when you know our history well, and you celebrate how we are when we are, it makes perfect sense that there will be movement in our protests.
Just a quick follow-up. I'm curious for folks who don't have that knowledge of self, specifically members of the African diaspora, what would you suggest to everyday people who may not have a background in dance whatsoever? What would you suggest to them in terms of keeping alive, or how might they immerse themselves in this tradition? Where do people start in terms of diving into the world of African dance?
It depends on where you are. Take a class, and even me calling it a class it goes to show you that that too much of it has been compromised by our presence in the United States. But take a class, go see work, and appreciate the stuff. And this is a hard notion, because when you're living history, or when you're living something culturally, it's difficult to see the value in it until you step away from it, right? Like when I was dancing to Freak Out by La Chic with my mom at 6 and 7 years old, I didn't realize that was going to be my portal to becoming a professional dancer or a scholar. I didn't know that then. I was just having fun with my mom as we got ready for school and for work that day. But appreciate the moments, appreciate the things that are characteristic of a Black experience. The mothers of the church getting happy, the deacons of the church getting happy, the usher board marching around, the marching band marching down the street, the cheerleaders who are stomping and shaking more than kicking their legs up. All of those things that make us us, appreciate that and love on yourself, love us. And from there, you'll begin, and then you'll become curious about why we are and how we are. And that might be your avenue to learning more about how the function dance has in our survival, our maintenance, and our permanence. My late teacher, Dr. Karen Mush, used to always say that she's a dancer first, and it was through dance that she became curious about the movements that she was interested in. It was through dance she became more curious about the world. And of course, she was an amazing scholar, a very erudite woman who could read at just anything, So I would say that. I think, if you love on yourself, if you love yourself, then that becomes a curiosity, or it can be. It can develop into a curiosity about a larger system.
Last question, and we're going to let you get up out of here. A bit unrelated, but it absolutely is related. We're asking each guest on this season of Black History Year to contribute just one song to our joint playlist for Black liberation. With that said, Kemal, what's one song that has to be on your soundtrack for the revolution?
I have a new one.
Oh.
And Layla Hathaway's new song. Vanta Black. Hold on.
Oh, yeah. That's like the scientifically created the blackest black ever.
Yup, Vanta Black.
Oh, Vanta Black, Layla Hathaway. We gonna let you have that last word. Thank you so much, Kemal, for carving out time and space to speak with us. We really appreciate you sharing your expertise with us and just your personal experiences, fam. We would love to have you back. Thank you.
All right, no problem.
That was the truly incredible C. Kemal Nance, Umfundalai master and founder of the Nance Collective. Be sure to check Kemal's work at blackmandance.com. And remember, these black bodies of ours are made to move and feel joy. How can you start using dance to express yourself, resist, and step into liberation? Let us know in the comments on Push Black's Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube pages. Find us and tag us at We Are Push Black. And if you found this conversation valuable, don't forget to share this episode on your social media too. Until next week, be free. You're living in history. At Push Black, we agree with Marcus Garvey when he said, a people without knowledge of their past history, origin, and culture is like a tree without roots. We believe telling empowering stories on Black life and history can build a more liberated Black future. Being here with us lets us know you probably feel that's important too. You matter. Your choice to be here matters. It lets us know that you value this work. And you make Push Black happen with your contributions at blackhistoryyear.com. Most people do $5 or $10 a month, but everything makes a difference. Thank you for supporting the work. Black History Year is a production of Push Black, the nation's largest nonprofit Black media company. Our team includes Brooke Brown, Mina Davis, Kevin McFall, Gabby Roberts, and Leslie Taylor Grover. Producing the show, we have Cydney Smith and Lynn Webb, who also edits the show. Black History Year's executive producers are Lilly, Workneh, and Julian Walker. And I'm your host, Darren Wallace.